the change detection strategy OnPush have a completely different approach. If you use it in a component, this component will ignore the dirty check cycle unless the reference of any of the component input changes or there's a change on the internal state. So back to our components graph. If timer is using the OnPush strategy, when it detects an internal state change, then it fires the change detection strategy for this component. And in this case, Angular will find out to which branch this component belongs, and then runs the dirty check cycle, but only on this branch. Another situation to consider when using the OnPush detection strategy are the external changes. When a component is following this strategy, have an input, and this input changes in a mutable way without modifying the reference to the object, then this change will be ignored. The OnPush detection strategy is designed to be much more optimized, so to detect changes on the inputs, it needs them to be immutable, because checking those cases is a lot more efficient. So when my immutable input changes, then it also fires the dirty check on this branch. But let me explain you briefly what's the difference between immutable and mutable objects. Well, we can see objects as reference to memory. So imagine this variable object1 that is an object with several properties, boolean set to true. Then the variable object1 is defining a position on the memory. And then this position of memory is where all the content of this object is stored. A mutable object allows you to freely modify its content, like changing property 5 to false. To detect this change, I will have to check all the properties of this object to find out which one have changed. That's why this strategy is not really efficient. Let's see now immutable objects. Immutable objects cannot be modified internally. To make changes, you have to create a brand new object. So if I want to modify this property from true to false, what I have to do is to create a new object1. But when you create a new object, in fact, your variable is referencing a different space of memory. So this way, in order to detect changes, Angular only have to check if the reference of the object have changed or not. That's why dirty check with immutable objects is more performant, because it only have to compare the reference to the object and not all of its properties. Okay, so to optimize my application and prevent unnecessary calls to my progress getter, I'm gonna change the detection strategy of the timer component to OnPush. So in timer component TS, inside component metadata, I add change detection, and I set it to change detection strategy. OnPush, I have to import this object change detection strategy from Angular core, and then if I go to see the results, I can see let's get in progress here, but also when I click play, I don't see any more logs, neither interface changes until the countdown ends. What have I told you about the change detection strategy OnPush? Well, that my component is not gonna check its state unless it receives an event like the button click or that the input reference changes, and this is not the case. But don't worry, there's a solution for situations where the change is produced inside the component instead of outside. You can tell by hand to the change detection system that it has to run again. This is done with the service changeDetectorRef that I'm gonna inject here by dependency injection. So I go to the constructor and write private cdref of type changeDetectorRef. And of course, I also have to import this changeDetectorRef, as you can see here, from Angular core. And this changeDetectorRef is a service that allows me to tell Angular in which moment it has to detect changes. In this case, when I receive new information from my observable, here I'm changing the content. So here's where I want to detect those changes. So here I use my changeDetectorRef to make sure Angular will check this component. I use the mark4check method. So I save my code and go to the browser. And then when I click play, you can see that everything is updating perfectly. But now we are only logging those access to the progress getter of the timer that is working. My other timers don't have called this progress getter because they have not been aware of those changes. The only component that has been aware of those changes is the timer that I'm manipulating. In a simple situation like this, where there are not too many events, this is not a game changer. However, if you have a complex application with a lot of components, a lot of dependencies and interactions, and a lot of bindings, then using change detection OnPush instead of the default one can help you prevent useless dirty checks and optimize the performance of your application.